Hi guys, it's Mr. Wallace here. My hair is getting more unruly, still don't have my green screen set back up, but I think it's nice for you to be able to see a bit of a familiar face before we get started with these. Last week we looked at ratio simplifying, okay? This week what we're going to do is look at how we calculate from a ratio. Okay, that's our topic for today. So, without any further ado, what I'm going to ask you to do is have a read through these questions. Pause the video if you need to, and make sure by the end of the video you're comfortable that you can answer these questions, okay? If not, you can rewatch the video. If rewatching the video doesn't help, get in touch with your teacher or a friend that maybe has a better idea, and that should hopefully help you kind of do your best to get through this topic, making sure you understand it as you go. So, we already discussed how a ratio is effectively just a way of comparing two quantities, okay? What that means is we could say in this ratio, for example, we are comparing how many dogs are in a shelter to how many cats there are in a shelter. Just for an example, okay? What that would mean is we're saying there are 4 dogs for every 10 cats. Okay, so it's just a way of comparing those two details. And we found out, or we worked through, that we could simplify a ratio just exactly the same way that we do a fraction. Okay, so we could say, well, what's a common factor we could divide both 4 and 10 by? And that answer you would hopefully spot quite quickly is 2. Okay, so 4 divided by 2 just gives you 2, and 10 divided by 2 gives you 5. So saying there are 4 dogs for every 10 cats is actually almost the exact same thing as saying there are 2 dogs for every 5 cats. Okay, and this is an important thing for starting off with these ratio calculations, is to realise that this statement here and this statement here, they kind of just mean the same thing, okay? If I had 2 dogs for every 5 cats, and I found out that I had 4 dogs, that would mean I had 10 cats. And a ratio calculation is really just exactly that. It's starting here at the bottom of the simplification we just did and working our way backwards. Okay, multiplying instead of dividing to get to a bigger ratio. And usually it's so that we can find out an unknown number. So we might have been told there were 4 cats and be asked to work out told there were 4 dogs and asked to work out how many cats there were. Okay, we'll look at that in this next example, which is example 1 of our ratio calculations, okay? It starts at a food stand. The usual ratio of burgers to hot dogs sold is 2 to 5, okay? And step 1 for any of these calculations, I'm going to say, is always make sure the first thing you do is identify your ratio, okay? So we're dealing with burgers to hot dogs, okay, sold. Give that a quick fix. Okay, and we've been told in the question, it's up here, that ratio is 2 to 5. So that's always step 1, identify your ratio. Okay, and remember it's important which way around you write a ratio. The ratio of burgers to hot dogs being 2 to 5 means the ratio of hot dogs to burgers would not be the same thing. It would be 5 to 2, totally different ratio. Okay, the next thing we're asked to do is figure out how many hot dogs were sold on a particular day if we know that they sold 16 burgers. Okay, so it says on one afternoon the stand sold 16 burgers. Estimate how many hot dogs the stand sold. So you know you're going to have to work out how many hot dogs were sold for these 16 burgers. It means we need to put the 16 on this side. Okay? It's burgers, so it has to stay on this side of the ratio. And what we're going to ask ourselves for step 2 is what did we multiply 2 by to get that 16? Okay? Should be pretty easy to work out. We just multiplied it by 8, okay? Because 2 8s give me 16. What that means is to estimate the number of hot dogs for that same afternoon, we're going to have to multiply this side by 8 as well. Okay, 5 eighths, you should be able to work it out, is 40. Okay, so 16 to 40 on that particular day means that we sold 40 hot dogs at this stand. It's always good practice to just write your final answer out separately and identify that you know what the units or whatever else you need to put in there to identify it should be, okay? So 40 hot dogs were sold on that afternoon. And that's it. That's all that's involved in this first ratio calculation, okay? Doesn't get too much more difficult than this. The only thing they can complicate this with is asking you to figure out what the ratio should be in the first place. And we're going to look at that in the next example. So, example 2 reads, at a private airfield, it turns out that there are 10 helicopters, okay? 10 helicopters for every 35 planes that arrive. Now, part A, and we need to read this carefully, says write the ratio of plane arrivals to helicopter arrivals. Okay, so we're interested in planes. Compared to helicopters. Conveniently, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it on my audio. There's a helicopter going by outside right now. So, one thing you need to be careful of here is a lot of people might be tempted to just go straight up to the top of the question and say, first number's 10, second number's 35. There's something wrong with that. And I'm hoping you can spot what it is. 35 is the number of planes, okay? So they're not always going to give you them in the order they want the ratio in up here. You need to be careful of that. Okay, so 35 is actually the number of planes. So we need to have a ratio of 35 to 10 helicopters, okay? Now we've figured out what this ratio is, but in order to finish the question, they want it in its simplest form, okay? So we're going to have to do what we did in that first quick little example, and we're going to have to ask ourselves, what's the common factor? What's our highest common factor, okay? Pause the video if you like. I'll give you a couple of seconds and we'll go over exactly what that is. Okay, so if you did pause the video, hopefully you would have figured out that you need to divide both sides by 5. Okay, and that will give you 35 divided by 5 is 7. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Okay, so our ratio of plane arrivals to helicopter arrivals is 7 to 2. Now, on to the bit of this that actually involves a calculation, okay? It says if 12 helicopters arrive one day, how many planes would you expect to arrive if that ratio holds, okay? This is the other place you need to be careful, okay? We've been told on this particular day we know that 12 helicopters arrive. Okay, now in example 1, we were told 16 burgers and we just put the 16 burgers down here. We had to match it up to the right side of the ratio. Okay, so if we know 12 helicopters arrived on this particular day, that means this known number needs to go over here on the right hand side of the ratio. Okay, and instead of thinking how did I get from 7 to 12, I'm saying how did I get from 2 to 12? What have I multiplied by? Okay, and of course 2 times 6 is going to give you that 12. Okay. Now, that means you want to multiply this side by 6 to get our expected number of aeroplanes. Okay. And 7 6s, you should know it, it's in your times tables. It's just 42. Okay. We've scaled up that ratio. We need to show that we understand what we were being asked and what our final answer should be. We were asked how many planes would you expect to arrive? So your final answer should at a bare minimum be 42 planes. Okay, you could say 42 planes arrive. Say I would expect 42 planes to arrive, but that's the bare minimum I'd expect to see right there. Okay, and again, that's the whole question. Any other steps might come into the realm of problem solving. It might just be a case of doing the process on repeat with some of the same numbers. But you'll see that as you go through practice material assigned by your teacher. Okay, it always follows this process, working backwards through what we did last week. Okay. Hopefully this is quite a short one compared to some of our previous videos, but that is us for this lesson, guys. Okay, so here's the questions again. Go back over them, make sure you can answer them. If not, think about having a wee look back in the video for the bit you didn't understand, and then start asking around for help if you're still not sure. Otherwise, I hope you have a great week. Hope you work hard when you need to, relax when you need to, and enjoy that time, guys. Okay, see you next time.